Live. We are live.
We are. Hello, and we are here at Spiritual Awakening Circle during our Special Spirit series. What we are doing here is we are raising awareness of challenges and those visible and invisible challenges and disabilities, so we can build more bridges for understanding and living in a better, more integrated community. At least that's the plan. We do it with small steps, and we are grateful. I am grateful for special guests we are hosting during this live series. Today it's Frank King. I'm so excited. I'm expecting some ha-has, so
Yeah.
no pressure, Frank. But Frank is a mental health comedian. I think that's how we can introduce you. And I will allow you to introduce yourself in more detail, so I'm not getting anything wrong. Please tell
Okay.
us.
I am the mental health comedian. Depression and suicide run in my family. My grandmother died by suicide. My mother found her. My great aunt died by suicide. My mother and I found her. I was 4 years old. I screamed for days. And I came close enough to dying by suicide in 2010 at the height of the last recession that I can tell you what the barrel of my gun tastes like. Spoiler alert, I did not pull the trigger. I started my entertainment career in comedy in 1985. Was on the road for 2,629 nights with my lovely wife, who just came along for the ride. And we worked with Jerry Seinfeld and Dennis Miller and Jeff Foxworthy and Ellen DeGeneres and Rosie O'Donnell back when they were just Adam Sandler, just comics. And then did a little radio and then did corporate comedy, which is essentially clean comedy after lunch, after dinner. And then the recession hit. And business dropped off 80%, filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy, and that's when I came close to dying by suicide. But again, I didn't pull the trigger. And after all was said and done, and bookings started again for speakers, they said, Frank, we love you, but we can't pay you that kind of money anymore just to be funny. You got to teach us something. So I had no idea. What do I have to teach anybody? And then I got thinking about my mental health history, my family's mental health history. I thought, you know what? I could speak on suicide prevention. So I took several courses on suicide prevention. That's what I do for a living when you can actually meet live. I go in and I start the conversation on suicide, giving other people permission to give voice to those feelings and experiences without the recrimination, the stigma that often comes with it. So that's my job. That's my purpose and my passion.
Yes, and that's an amazing, amazing purpose, amazing work, because we don't talk about it, do we? We don't talk about suicidal thoughts. We don't go to a friend to discuss that thought we've had. I think it is, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the decision is made within a second to actually commit a suicide. I think I've heard that before. So it doesn't take, okay, let's reverse back. The suicidal thought is one thing. Then there is the actual act of committing a suicide, and apparently this act itself happens within sort of seconds. So when it happens, it's just such a short space of time. So of course it's important to raise awareness. As we don't have much time to rescue someone from that act of actual suicide if it happens within such split of a second moment. And what I mean, it takes a lot of courage to be funny about it as well. So what was the trigger for you to actually be funny about the suicide and
because
put humor into it?
Being a comedian, it was just a hunch that if I could give them some comic relief, not jokes, but funny stories from my mental health journey, put them at ease. And I tell a few jokes along the way if something comes up and I've got a particular comedy bit that fits. But, and by the way, the 8 out of 10 people who are suicidal are ambivalent. They're not sure they want to do it. And 9 out of 10 people in the week leading up to an attempt give hints, verbal, nonverbal, physical, so behavioral. So that tells me that even though the act takes place very quickly, oftentimes there's a ramp up period in which they're hoping 9 out of 10 people that somebody will notice something and interrupt and say something. And and step out of their comfort zone and say, hey, are you depressed? Are you having thoughts of suicide? So the good news is we can save the vast majority of people if we know what to look for, what to listen for, and if we're willing to speak up. And it's not comfortable to speak up on that topic, but it could save a life. So, and that's my job, is to go in and make it more comfortable. I want to make talking about depression, thoughts of suicide, as comfortable as talking about the weather.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's a great challenge. That I think if anyone, you are the right man on a mission.
Yeah. Well, and I do shock my friends occasionally. I just booked an engagement in Florida on March 3rd, live and in person, which means I'm crawling on an airplane. And the Speakers Bureau said to me, Frank, it's in Florida. You're going to have to fly each way. Are you concerned about the pandemic, COVID? I go, look, you and I both know I'm suicidal. Do you have another speaker who's a better choice to get on that plane than somebody who's suicidal? Come on. And they laughed, but I mean, they know me. Sometimes it upsets neuronormal people when I speak that, out, frankly, pardon the pun, frankly, about suicide. Yes. But, again, it pulls it off from under a rock and brings it out, drags it out in the sunshine. And, it's not a big secret.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, and I think it helps in a way in your own managing your own condition, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I have major depressive disorder, which is depression. It lasts 3 days generally, my cycle, and it just comes around every now and then like a flat spot on a wheel. It's not generally situational. I've been most depressed some of the worst times in my life. So I have another ailment called chronic suicidal ideation, which is much more rare. It means for people like me, people in my tribe, the option of suicide as a solution for problems, big or small. And I tell the audience, here's how small. My car broke down a couple of years ago. I had 3 thoughts unbidden. 1, get it fixed. 2, buy new. And 3, I could just kill myself. That's just the way my brain works.
That's a solution.
Yes. Yeah, it's just a coping mechanism. And so every time I've spoken, except once in the last 6 years, there's been somebody in the audience who has chronic suicidal ideation, and they're unaware it has a name. They think they're just some kind of freak because of the way their brain works. I did a show at a college, and a woman came up to me afterwards. She's 21, 22. She goes, thank you for your keynote. I said, you're welcome. She goes, but I got to tell you, it made me weep. How did it make you weep? She goes, well, you know your story about the car? Get it fixed, buy a new one, just kill yourself. She goes, I've been having those thoughts all my life.
Wow.
I didn't know it had a name. I thought I was some kind of freak and completely alone. And when I heard you say that out loud, I realized for the first time in my life that I am not alone, and I wept. So that's very therapeutic for me to be able to perhaps steer somebody far enough off the path to suicide they might live a normal life, just with the knowledge that they're not alone in this particular, ailment.
Condition. Yes.
Yeah. So,
and you being a great example of living your life with that condition and still being alive, the most important thing. So there should be a hope for anyone else. How a small percentage of people with that specific conditions are there? Are there any statistics? Do we know?
I don't know. And I think part of the reason there are not a lot of numbers is people don't give voice to those feelings. Because, in the United States, in a number of states, if you told your therapist that you were depressed, having thoughts of suicide, you had a plan, you're going to spend 3 days locked down involuntarily in a mental health facility. So people just don't share that information. I think we should be able to share that without necessarily being locked down. Because if somebody said to me, Frank, are you depressed? And if it had been this weekend, I would have said, yeah, I'm wretchedly depressed. Are you having thoughts of suicide? Always. Do you have a plan? I got half a dozen plans. What do you want to hear? But the next question should be, well, are you going to kill yourself? No, why would I kill myself?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, if we could give voice like I'm speaking to you here to these thoughts without having somebody, knock down the door and drag me out and lock me up for 3 days. And sometimes people need the 3-day lockdown, get their meds straight, get some rest. But I think if we allow people to talk more openly about it, we would save lives. And that's kind of my job.
Yeah, well, I think you are just hitting the nail on its head. If people are too afraid to talk about it, then they can't process the whole mixture of emotions and validate those feelings, which again you are doing in such a funny, quirky, witty way. Just give them a head up. Come on, this is happening to me, and I'm talking about it. I'm living my life. So I think that's super important. And I think we were talking about it off the screen here. You mentioned that you think that your sense of humor might be connected to that depressive depression which you are suffering from. So yeah. So
I believe. Yeah, I did a TEDx talk on this called Mental with Benefits, because everybody I met who was mentally ill but was functional seemed to have some kind of superpower. Great singer, dancer, comedian, writer, artist. I thought it can't be a coincidence. Mm-hmm. So I think that my depression and thoughts of suicide are simply the flip side of my imagination, creativity, my comic ability. Here's why. I can teach you to write stand-up comedy. I can teach you to perform stand-up comedy. What I cannot teach you to do is process the incoming information the way my brain does. And the example I give is, have you ever been in a theater watching a movie with a bunch of people, back when we did that?
Yes.
And there's something on the screen and you laugh out loud. And then when you stop laughing, you realize, wait a minute, I was the only one laughing. Because you saw something funny that the rest of the people didn't see. And that's how my brain's like that all day long, all night long. I'm always looking for the turn of a phrase, play on words, something funny. And I think it's just the way my brain is wired or miswired, depending on how you look at it. It's my gift and my curse, I guess.
I guess in a way, yes. I mean, as you might know, you might remember, I mentioned my son has been diagnosed on the autism spectrum. And when I was learning more about the condition, I've also found that there is just such a small, literally such a small space between autistic and genius.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just that it skips the generation, and it's just the different rewiring of the brain, which makes us different. But nonetheless.
Well, and you said he had an ability. Was it when he's reading, he sees? What was it?
I am, from my observations, he's only 6, so we'll see the way it goes. But I'm seeing the very mathematical way of processing the language. If that makes sense. So he can put the words, see the words in a very mathematical order. Funny enough, he doesn't like maths. So it's an interesting way for me to see different way of processing the same information. But there is definitely that, and that's what we are doing here, sort of highlighting that not everyone is the same, not everyone will have the same processing. And also, it's not only about the brain; it's also the emotions, I guess. Which are affected in the way we process information. So we just need to be a bit more understanding and have that awareness to see what is out there. And talking of it, do you have any tips in terms of raising awareness for the suicide prevention? Do you have any tips of what to look at, what would be a trigger, a warning sign in someone's behavior?
Well, and with your son, before we leave, that go upstream, a young man, 6 years old. If we can change the frame for him, yes, son, you do have a mental disability. What most adults will never tell you, you also have some special abilities. So we reframe we reframe a mental disability from a singularity to a duality. You have this disability, but you also have this amazing ability, and your peers can't touch. So we could change the frame and make him like Harry Potter. Yeah, he's weird. Yeah, he's got the lightning bolt. He's kind of a dork. He's half muggle, but he's just a wizard. So I think of children like that who have a special ability, kind of like Harry Potter. He seems nerdish and, a loser in the beginning. But of course, we all know things work out for him because you know what he does? He focuses on his abilities, not the fact that he's a half breed, muggle and human, not the weird lightning bolt, whatever, if we could, for children, if we could focus on and embrace and energize those talents, I think we reduce bullying and the stigma and eventually suicide. So I think it begins very young, I think. Okay. Yeah. So let's say you think your friend's depressed. Here's a sign or two. They eat too much or can't eat, sleep too much or can't sleep. They have difficulty getting out of bed in the morning and make it to the Zoom meeting, but they rally in the afternoon. If it's an afternoon Zoom, they're always early. Okay. It's maybe because they're having trouble dragging themselves out of bed to do a shower and run a little wash. And that brings me to the third one, and you can observe this on Zoom. There's Zoom casual. And then if people are depressed, they oftentimes let their personal hygiene go. Their hair's a little dirty. You see their clothes and you think, I wonder, is that it doesn't look like they washed clothes. Those are signs that they may be cycling down because they're having trouble dragging themselves to the bathroom, shower, wash, run a little wash. The question comes, what do you say to somebody who's depressed? Well, here's what you don't say. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Turn that frown upside down. Have you tried fish oil? I can't tell you how many times.
Oh, goodness, yes.
Here's what you do say. I'm here for you and I mean it. I know you're not lazy, crazy, or self-absorbed. I know that depression is a mental illness. The good news is, with time and treatment, things will get better. I'll take the time. I'll help you get the treatment. And then, this is the most difficult part, have to ask them, are you having thoughts of suicide? And if you can't ask that, find somebody who can give voice to that and ask them just like that, are you having thoughts of suicide? Well, let's say they're not forthcoming. You suspect they are, but they didn't tell you. How do you know? Well, talk about death and dying. They're Googling death and dying all the time. Death and dying appears as a theme in their artwork, their music, their writing. They're getting their affairs in order. They're giving away prized possessions because they want to make sure they go to the people they want them to go to when they're gone. And here's a really dangerous one. They've been depressed forever, and then for no apparent reason, they're happy. And you're happy because thank goodness they're finally happy. Problem is they may be happy because they've chosen time, place, and method, and they know the pain is coming to an end, because suicide is most often not about wanting to kill yourself. It's about simply wanting to end the pain.
Suffering.
Now, let's say they do admit they're suicidal. You say, do you have a plan? And if they say they have a plan, what is your plan? And if it's detailed, time, place, method, do your best to get them on the phone with the suicide prevention hotline. And if they won't pick it up, you pick up the phone, you call the hotline, and the volunteer will do what they can to get the phone into the hand of the person who's in crisis. Now, let's say they are suicidal, they have a plan, but it's not really well formed, just kind of nebulous. I would then say, okay, are you going to kill yourself? And if they say no, I would say, okay, tell me why not. Make them give voice to whatever it is that's keeping them here. So that's the protocol. At least that's the one I teach. with an eye toward, if you know what to look for and you know what to listen for and you know what to say, if people are throwing off hints, 9 out of 10 and 8 out of 10 are ambivalent, we can save the vast majority of people by stepping in. Suicide is the most preventable cause of death on the planet. And anybody who knows what they're doing can stop a suicide. You don't have to be a clinician.
Amazing. So we just need to take that responsibility for another human being in a way. Difficult. Yes, absolutely. But then saves lives. And as you said, it's the most common and least known probably still.
Yep. And it's getting worse with the pandemic.
That's where I wanted to go in my next question. That pandemic is particularly difficult for people with mental health issues, and for people without it, who are prone to suffering from loneliness, not seeing their children, parents, friends, and I've experienced the syndrome of withdrawal from social situations, and I miss my parents dearly.
Mhm.
That causes a bit of pain and suffering. I'm not experiencing depression, but I can easily see how it could be triggered by those circumstances. So it's
Well, what worries me is you have all these people who have never been depressed, and they may be what's called situationally depressed because of the pandemic and the social distancing. And if you've never been depressed, how do you know
how
why?
do you
How
know?
do you figure out why you can't get out of bed in the morning if you've never been depressed? And
Yes.
and that's what worries me is people who, they've never had to worry about. So what I've been doing podcast after podcast after podcast, telling people how mentally ill people, high functioning mentally ill people,
Mhm.
get out of bed every morning, because for us it's an uncertain world every day whether there's a pandemic or not. So
Yes.
it's called a self-care plan. Most mentally ill people who are high functioning have a self-care plan. Mine's diet, exercise, good night's sleep, meditation, medication, those 5 things. And at the heart of it, these 5 things I can control: my diet, my exercise, my good night's sleep, and I have a routine. I go to bed roughly the same time, get up roughly the same time, even though I don't have to commute or go anywhere. I get up about the same time, go to bed. I eat same time, exercise same time. Binge watch the Queen's Gambit on Netflix, that chess thing.
Oh, brilliant.
Oh my god! Yeah, I thought, how good could it be? Oh god, it's so good.
Yes.
But I have my time of day where I do that, and so again, routine means you are controlling the things you can control because the rest of the world is so out of control.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I've been teaching neuronormal people. And it's okay to feel the way you feel, and it's probably situational depression. And when the pandemic eases, and your routine returns, and you commute to work every day or whatever the end looks like, it'll ease up, and you'll may never be depressed again. But it worries me that they've never been through that. So how would you know? What's
Yeah, they are
wrong with me?
stepping. Yeah, of course, they are stepping into unknown territory, which you know very well. That for majority of people in these circumstances, pandemic circumstances, it's quite
Well, and here's the
yeah,
problem. Here's
interesting.
one of the problems with that is that I know my cycle. It happened over the weekend. I felt myself sliding on Friday night. I knew by Saturday morning I'd be really depressed, and I knew that 72 hours later things would be fine. But if you've never been depressed and you don't have a cycle, yet you feel like it's never going to get any better than it is at this moment, and that's a very dangerous thought.
Mhm.
You feel like the pain's going to be like this forever, and then the darker thoughts come in. I want to end the pain.
Yes.
But pretty much everybody has a cycle of some length or other.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you've just again you so beautiful to talk to you because you just named it, the routine. The practice are so important, not only for people with depression and mental illness. I know how important it is for my son, but for neurotypical people, to use that word, for everyone, that routine is our superpower in a way, when we can sort of rely on our own mechanisms rather than external world.
Yeah.
And that's what we also teach here in Spiritual Awakening Circle when we are talking about meditation, sort of finding that strength within, connecting with oneself rather than someone else's sort of wishes and hopes and dreams about them, and expectations, a very dangerous thing. Someone else's expectations.
Yeah. I've said that myself.
Oh, that's a different lot of expectations. Yeah.
Well, and I've got one of my TEDx coaching clients has a TEDx called Individuation Now. Individuation is realizing that you're living up to somebody else's expectations. That not yours. You don't belong with this person doing this thing in this place. You feel like there's something else you should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's called individuation. And the subtitle is, what if who you are isn't really who you are? Because so many people live up to other people's expectations.
Yes, that's great. I love it. And of course, it starts from the childhood when parents put expectations on their children, and then it carries on through this educational system, the work. Oh goodness! I mean, that's good enough for Ted for sure.
Yeah, well, and he says that it began in childhood because when you're born into a family, you kind of go along to get along to survive. It's a human instinct. You know, you do what they expect you to do so that, you know, they don't kick you out of the tribe. But unfortunately for him, it carried on into adulthood. He was doing the job his mother wanted him to do and his second wife wanted him to do. And when he went back to school, quit all that, second wife left him, mother never spoke to him again.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, but in his talk, he talks about there can be collateral damage and finding yourself that way, and you're happy in the long run, but just be aware. If you've been living up to other people's expectations and you stop,
yes,
you know, there are going to be questions.
Oh gosh, and that can be another case of mental health issue as well.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. I mean, there are conditions like yours, which I believe is genetics.
Yep.
And then there are those circumstantial, situational conditions which can be provoked at any time, and we are all prone to it. We don't really have a guarantee unless we create that mechanism which we can rely on, and that mechanism has to come sort of from within, rather than from that external support we can get. That's my sort of little conclusion I'm making here. That
well, I would advise both internally, and then we've written several books on men's mental health. I have 2 more to come, and one of the things we say in the first book is kind of like driving a race car. You need a pit crew, so when the wheels come off, they're right there. They know what's going on. They know what needs to be done. So you have to do some internal work, but you should also, I think, share your condition with people you know, love, and trust. So if it melts down, they're not taken by surprise. You know, they have a good idea what to do and how to do it, what you need, and aren't going to judge. So it's
no judgment, no, please.
Yeah, and the problem for men is oftentimes men tend to shed friends through life. They fewer and fewer friends, whereas women tend to collect them.
Yeah. Well, we like collecting.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, it's changing. They're doing some things to encourage men, and we in the book we encourage men to join whatever. You know, if you're a car nut, you know, join a car club, or if you know the Rotary, or whatever hobby you have.
That's
join that club, and make friends.
Yes, create a tribe, a connection with the other people who share something in common with you.
Yes, and we'll be there for you when things go sideways.
Yes, and men are much worse in terms of handling depression and.
It's called toxic masculinity. It's when I grew up in the southern United States, and let me tell you something: big boys don't cry.
Yes, well, I guess it's still that type of upbringings there.
Yeah, and for people to see me on stage telling my story and getting choked up, to see a man cry and show emotions on stage is, it's being vulnerable is a powerful, it's very attractive. People can relate; they feel your pain, and so because men don't normally. Men generally. You have to back them into a corner. The spouse has to say, look, I love you, but I'm not going to put me and the kids through this. So get help or we're done. Or a boss says, look, if you're not going to get therapy, don't come in Monday morning. That's generally how men get into therapy. You have to back them into a corner.
Oh, wow. Yes. I mean, if they are lucky, they've got someone to put them in that corner.
Yeah. And some don't. And 8 out of 10 people in the U.S. who die of suicide are men. 8 out of 10, because they generally don't reach out, and it's a shame because it's preventable if you just reach out.
Yes,
but that's real men don't reach out.
Yes. Wow. Well, let's again challenge that stigma and challenge that stereotype.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so impressed with what you are doing. It's great.
Thanks.
No, absolutely. And also, I think with lessons, for me, the best lessons come from stories. and also from having a bit of humor there. So that's the lessons I will remember personally.
Yeah.
So you've just found a way of combining the two, so
Yeah.
both healing ingredients.
Very, very dark, very, in my TEDx talk, I said, I went to TEDx.com or TED.com. I typed in the word suicide to see how other people handle the topic, watch some TED talks on suicide. Well, there's tens of thousands of talks on hundreds of thousands. They had 3 talks on suicide, just 3.
Wow.
And I said to the audience, well, then it hit me. If you're really good at suicide, chances are you're not going to be recording at TEDx. It's dark, but it's funny.
Yes, yeah. Well, I think that humor is a one way of raising that vibration, which we need, raising that emotional state, mental state. So it's good for me, and I'm sure it's good for many people to actually bring humor into the darkest of the times and conditions. I'm just going to bring some comments, because we've got who we have here. Sherry, yes, saying hello to us. Nice.
Hi, Sherry McQueen. I wish I had that much hair.
Oh, Sherry is great. She's our member. Oh, and Sherry says she actually saved her cousin from killing himself. Oh my gosh.
Good for you. Well done.
That is exactly. There we go. Here we go. So someone completely agrees with you too. But yes, as Sherry said, it was scary to save someone from death. I guess it can be.
Yeah. I mean, it's to talk about it is frightening to be, to be that close to a potential suicide. It's, it takes some nerve, guts to step in. And
yes. Yes. And do you think that would require a bit of therapy as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think
that sort of experience.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to work through that experience that close to a suicide with a therapist, just to make sure you've got all the whatever the excess baggage you have left over from that process.
Yeah. Do you work with people around suicide? I mean, suicide prevention, of course, but with people who, like Sherry, might have been in a situation where the suicide was so close to someone trying to kill himself or herself. Do you work with people?
Only unofficially and casually. I give out my phone number, and you're welcome to put it in the show notes. And people call me. A guy called me. He was terribly depressed and suicidal, and he mentioned that he had just gotten a copy of the Amtrak train schedule, which means he's planning on stepping out in front of a train. Now, good thing he told me, because I wasn't shocked. I said, look, here's the deal. I'm not going to ask you not to kill yourself. What I am going to ask you is not that way, because chances are when you step out on the tracks, you and the engineer are going to lock eyes, and it's going to stay with that person for the rest of their days. Who knows what kind of impact that's going to have on that. So, I understand your desire to end your life, but that would destroy someone else's in the process.
Yeah.
So hopefully he's still alive, but
we can only hope. Absolutely.
Yep.
And there will be people who will not be talked out of it. We know that.
No, can't save everybody.
Yes, but at least we can do as much as we can, and raising awareness, looking for signs, and having the ability to sort of tackle it and somehow have that sort of confidence that we can talk someone out of it, or at least be that person who is there for them. Because sometimes I think you might agree or might not, but it's a cry for help, isn't it? It's just saying, I'm lonely, I don't have anywhere to go, or I found myself in a situation where it's just too much, it's overwhelming.
Yeah, too painful. Yep. Too painful. And it takes courage to step out of your comfort zone, step up. And my advice would be always go with your intuition, go with your gut. If you walk by somebody and for some reason into your brain pops the thought, I think he's depressed, there's something that your brain took in that thought didn't come out of nowhere. So maybe your brain picked up some things you weren't consciously aware of about their behavior or something they said, and it tosses up this, hey, I think he's depressed. So go with your intuition, I believe.
Absolutely. Completely agree with that as well. And I don't know if there is anything else you would like to add to this chat. If not, we can wrap up and let you maybe binge on the Queen Gambit.
Well, if they go to the mental health comedian, thementalhealthcomedian.com, our first book on men's mental health, I narrated the audiobook, and it's there. You put in an email address, you get download for free.
We can put it in the comments, so definitely it will be a pleasure to insert the information. Yes.
Yep, that'd be a freebie. Wouldn't cost you a dime. You get to hear me narrate the first book. So
fabulous. Amazing. We will definitely put the link there. And thank you so much for being such a wonderful guest and for all the work you are doing. Amazing. And well, good luck.
Yes. Give your son a hug for me.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. And to everyone who watched us and who will watch us on the replay. Bye for now.
Ciao for now.